Hola. So this is going to be like a really off the cuff, kind of shorthand, pretty nonsense video. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to make a tier list for Dark Souls PvP weapons as is, but given how bad this tier list is, I'm going to try to make a better one and give a little bit of context for like why things are placed where they are rather than just some random fucking jumble of complete nonsense. So yeah, we'll pretty much jump right into it. The tier list is going to look a little bit different from the community-made tier list. First of all, I have an F tier. These are going to be like, understand that, first of all, there's a small tier gap between A and S, and a very large tier gap, between E and F. So F tier is going to be far below everything else. Starting off with the straight swords, we have Astora straight sword. So the Astora straight sword is a D tier weapon. It scales with faith and it has split damage. The fact that it has split damage means that it can't be buffed. So that kind of like hurts it a lot because some of the really good faith spells are just the weapon buffs. So there's really like not any reason to use this weapon pretty much at all, especially considering how good the other straight swords are. And that brings us to our first S tier weapon, which is going to be the Balder Side Sword. There are a lot of reasons the Balder Side Sword is an S tier weapon. It has really good range. It has really good scaling. It has really good damage. It's just all around a really good weapon, and it swings in an arc, or rather in a sweep, which is very good, and it also has some really good thrusting attacks. Just a very, very good weapon. This is one of the weapons that's ranked way too highly, in my opinion, in the other tier list. I don't see why it's in the same tier as some of the other weapons that it's in the same tier as. This is very clearly, in my opinion, like a C or D tier weapon. I don't see how you could put it much higher or lower. There are better bleed weapons. There are better short swords. It's just not particularly good at all. So it's the barbed straight sword. It's a pretty middling weapon in my opinion. Same thing with the broadsword. It suffers mostly from the fact that like the other straight swords are just very good as well. It also has, I think, the shortest range of any short sword, assuming you don't count like the broken swords. So yeah, not a huge reason to use that weapon. Scaling's all right, but it's just not as good as some of the other weapons. This is the broken straight sword, which is very clearly an F tier weapon. Like, doesn't exist. It's not a real weapon. Don't use it. I shouldn't need to say that, but I guess I do, because on the community tier list, it's like not even bottom tier. Where is it? Where is it? Here it is, in the B tier. Of course, where it belongs, right? It's clearly a B tier weapon. No, absolute garbage. F tier, 100% F tier. Crystal Straight Sword, that's an E tier weapon. You could make an argument that it's either F or D tier, but it's definitely an E tier weapon. It's only really good if you're cheating, which is like not the same weapon at that point, so that's kind of a moot argument, but it's just not very good. There's no reason to use it. It's pretty much what it comes down to. Dark Sword's a C tier weapon. You can make an argument for B tier, but it's kind of slow. It surpasses most of the straight swords in range, but it's just not really worth using for any reason, and it doesn't have a thrusting attack, which kind of sucks. Drake Sword. This is another sword that's ranked way too highly on the community tier list. This is an F tier weapon. The reason this weapon's bottom tier, despite the fact that it has really low stat requirements and high base damage, is that, first of all, it doesn't scale off of anything, and with how low the stat requirements are to wield it, there's no real place to put those points. Like, if you were to main, like, basically just use the Drake Sword, like, you would have so many extra points that you're dumping them into a stat where they're not really giving you any benefit. It's not a good weapon by pretty much any stretch of the imagination. It's very much an early game weapon, and even then there are things that surpass it very quickly. Mind you, this is for PvP, so, PvE doesn't really matter, but it gets an honorable mention for that, I guess, for some new players, but it's just not very good. Longsword. This is an S tier weapon. The longsword is very, very good. Just all around a great weapon. Has slashing and thrusting attacks, high base damage, really good scaling. Requires more stat investment than the Balder Side Sword to get it going. I think it's slightly worse than the Balder Side Sword, but that's an opinion, and it also does more damage, so, there's definitely an argument to be made for using the longsword, and it's very, very good. You can actually use the longsword at pretty much any level of PvP as well, which, is nice. The short sword. Okay, so the short sword is a D tier weapon. You can make an argument for E tier. You could also make an argument for C tier. But that being said, it's like I just average it out to put it in the D tier. It's not very good. It's basically the longsword but worse range, worse damage. There's no reason to use it. Has the exact same moveset. Isn't stronger than any other straight sword really in any particular way. It's just kind of bad. Yeah, there's no real reason to use it. Silver Knight straight sword, Silver Knight sword. That's a C tier weapon. Doesn't really do anything that the other longsword class weapons, don't. Lacks a good thrusting attack, or a reliable thrusting attack at least, and it has the range of like basically the Balderside sword, but it's just not. It's not very good. I think part of it is really the scaling. I don't know what causes this weapon to do less damage than it should, but like it feels like it should do more damage than it does. It also looks really cool, so that's, if you're making an aesthetic tier list, you might bump it up. Straight Sword Hilt, it's obviously an F tier weapon. It doesn't belong anywhere but F tier. It's just a bad weapon. You shouldn't use it. There's no reason to use it whatsoever. Storage. Ooh, I almost called this the Astora Straight Sword. What was Sunlight Straight Sword? That's, Sunlight Sword, whatever you want to call it. It's the same shit. That's an A tier weapon. It's very good. The reason it's below the Longsword is that despite, I believe, having slightly higher base damage, the scaling's a little wonky, if I remember correctly, and also it's a little bit heavier, which kind of matters. It's the only reason it's not like basically S tier actually, is because it's a little bit heavier than the Longsword, and the Longsword also exists. So, it kind of suffers a little bit from opportunity cost relative to the Longsword. So yeah, just not particularly good. Into Ultra Great Swords. So the Black Knight Greatsword is a C tier weapon. Black Knight Ultra Great Sword is a C tier weapon. It's not particularly good. It's not particularly bad. 18 dex is a really weird number. Is kind of a recurring theme with the Black Knight weapons. It's just strange to have to throw a few points in there just to use a Black Knight weapon. And you don't really want to do that. More often than not, there are basically better options. The Demon Great Machete, I believe is the official name. That's a B tier weapon if I've ever seen one. It's like pretty good, but like not super good. It's clearly better than the Black Knight Greatsword. It's also clearly worse than some other Ultra Greatswords. It's just not great. Dragon Greatsword is what I'm going to call this. I think that's the official name. I don't recall. Dragon Greatsword is a D tier weapon. The reason that it finds itself below C tier, despite being like not that bad, is because of the stat investment. Basically, first of all, it's very heavy, which is kind of annoying. It's like really, really heavy, so that holds a couple of weapons back. But basically, the biggest problem with this weapon is that the amount of stat investment that you have to put into it, in addition to the fact that it doesn't actually scale with any of that stat investment, means that there are just better options. It's not bad per se, but it's also not really good, and there's not really any reason to use it over anything else. Zweihander. This is a B tier weapon. Could be an A tier weapon, depending on, how you like really want to break things down, but it's pretty good. It's got some things going for it. It's got pretty great range. Does a decent amount of damage, but it basically barely pulls itself out of C tier because it's just not. It doesn't really have that much going for it. It's also significantly lighter than I think any other Ultra Greatsword. Might be wrong about that, but it's very light relative to other Ultra Greatswords, so that's kind of nice. There's really not that much to say about this weapon, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's good. It's actually better than I wish I could make a bajillion tiers and just slot things in here and there, but in reality, Zweihander is probably better than the Demon Great Machete, but Demon Great Machete is also clearly better than any other Ultra Greatsword that's going to find itself in C tier. Greatsword's an A tier weapon. It's really good. It's not really, really good, but in my opinion, it's better than the Zweihander. These are basically on equal footing. The only reason I separate them is because I think this one's better. It's basically an opinion, more or less. Again, I wish there were more tier separations, but I didn't want this to have 9 tiers in it because it's a little bit excessive. But when thinking about the Ultra Greatswords, basically this one, the Greatsword and the Zweihander are basically on equal footing, and they're both better than the Great Machete. But I put them with a tier gap because I do think that the Ultra Greatsword is better than the Zweihander. I think its R2 attacks have a little bit more of a use case than the Zweihander. It's got a little bit less range, if I remember correctly, but it's also just like really, really fucking cool. So yeah. Gravelord Sword. Okay. Gravelord Sword's a C tier weapon. It's not bad. It has pretty piss scaling. And it's got, I think, the second most range of any of the like two-handed curved swords. But it's just not, like, I don't know. I want it to work, but it's one of those things where like it has such a low stat requirement again that like if you try to make a build around it, it's basically going to end up being like a weird gouge build because you just have so many extra fucking points. Like at low level or lower level, it's pretty good, which is, you know, kind of one of its strengths is just sort of being like this low stat requirement, low stat investment weapon that does pretty good pure physical damage. But it's still not that good. It's not bad, it's just not good. C tier. Murakumo. Murakumo is going to go in the A tier. You can make an argument for S tier, but Murakumo, in my opinion, is definitely not S tier, considering what else goes in the S tier. I think Murakumo loses to, like, most things in the S tier, if not everything in the S tier, and also it's, while being the best of the two-handed curved swords, it's not, like, the two-handed curved sword class is not as good as people think it is. It had a surge in popularity at one point in time because it's, like, a really cool weapon, and I think, I can't imagine any other situation other than someone using it really well that, like, inspired other people to use it as well, but it's not, its, like, reputation is a little bit unwarranted. It's super good, which is why it finds itself in A tier, but it's not, like, that good. It's also better than both of these weapons, so that's kind of important. We'll put that on the left because, you know, and in fact, we're going to do this. There. That makes a little more sense. And while we're at it, we'll do this, because this at least has a use case, whereas these three basically do not. These five, actually. None of these have really a specific use case. They're just not bad. Then we'll do that. And, of course, that. Although hopefully nobody's looking at the F tier too closely. Basically everything in the F tier is, like, equally bad. The server. Man. Server's a C tier weapon. You can make an argument for D tier, but basically the argument for D tier would just be Murakumo exists, which is true, but the server is also, like, pretty good. Really not too much to say about this weapon. It has regain HP on, like, successful hit effect, but it's 5 HP, so it doesn't matter. And it doesn't really have any other, like, redeeming qualities, so that's pretty much all there is to it. It's not great, it's not bad. Has the two-handed curved sword moveset, which is pretty good. But it doesn't really do anything exceptional. Falchion's an A tier weapon. Falchion's very good. In fact, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit and a little bit more. The Falchion's really, really good. It has the second most range of any like, quote-unquote one-handed curved sword, although you pretty much always use the Falchion two-handed. The thing that basically keeps it out of S tier is that while it can be buffed, that really doesn't matter, because, like, once you put on a buff, most people are just, like, not going to fuck with you anymore. They, like, really are not about it. And this is true of both, like, well, I should say anybody who, like, kind of even a little bit really knows what they're doing, sort of. Because, like, you know, obviously in, like, a 1v1 scenario, like, people will let you buff. But even if you're doing, like, some sort of random invasion, like, once you've buffed, people are going to run away from you if they know what your buff does. If they, like, see a glowing sword, they're going to be like, oh shit, that's not good. That being said, you can also put on, like, pine resins and stuff, which are nice, but the thing that basically keeps Falchion out of S tier is that it doesn't do particularly high critical damage, which matters quite a bit. And in addition to that, it's just not, like, I don't know, I feel like it just loses to shield, especially if you can't dead angle. So, like, that's kind of a disconnect between the original game and the remaster. I'm pretty sure in the remaster there is no dead angling, so that kind of matters a lot for the Falchion, which sort of sucks for the Falchion, but is, like, pretty good for everybody else. Sort of. It's a mixed bag. It affects every weapon differently, but basically, regardless of whether or not dead angling exists, this is an A tier weapon and not an S tier weapon. I'm pretty sure the difference in dead angling availability is more so a difference in how you have to play with the weapon than how good the weapon actually is, at least in the case of the Falchion. Gold Tracer. Gold Tracer is an A tier weapon. It's a really niche curve sword. You can make an argument for it being an S tier just because the use case of the Gold Tracer makes it like so good. Basically, if somebody's putting their shield up, and especially if they don't have the ability to parry you or the option to parry you, or like you're unlocking and doing things properly with your Gold Tracer, there's really not much anybody who just wants to block can do. And once they've hit your shield a few times, they can't stop to hit you back, because doing so means that if you're trading hits, they're building bleed and you're both trading damage. So like the person building bleed is probably going to win, especially if they got a few hits of bleed on beforehand. Also looks very pretty, but you know, that doesn't really matter too much. Basically, the thing that keeps it out of S tier is that it just isn't. It really can't hold its own. It kind of needs other things to be paired alongside it. It's not the be all end all of weapons. Like maining it is not gonna just destroy everybody. Whereas these weapons you can basically use without switching to any other weapon in pretty much any scenario that you would find yourself in, which is kind of nice. That's not to say that you like wouldn't sometimes want to switch, but you'd find yourself switching off of a Gold Tracer a lot. Jagged Ghostblade. That's an E tier weapon. I would say D tier, but it's definitely an E tier weapon. I'm pretty sure it builds bleed, which is kind of cool, but it has like really low base damage and I think no scaling. If not no scaling, then like just kind of shitty scaling. It's just not very good. That's pretty much all there is to it. There's no reason to use it over any of the other curved swords. Painting Guardian Sword is a D tier weapon. Why is Painting Guardian Sword a D tier weapon? Well, it inflicts bleed. It can be buffed, which are both pretty cool, but its range is dog shit. Its range is so bad. There's really no two ways about it, and there's no way to work around that. The range of the Painting Guardian Sword is really just what holds it back. It's bad. Quelaag's Fury Sword. This is a tough one. Okay. Quelaag's Fury Sword is, I think, as close as something comes to being between A and S tier, because there's a very legitimate argument for it to be an S tier, and there's also like pretty legitimate arguments for it to not be an S tier. It's really good though. I'd put it above the Murakumo. It's really good. It can't be buffed. Split damage, scales with humanity and dexterity. Split damage doesn't really hold it back too much relative to like other weapons, but main strengths of it are really just the range. That's pretty much what it comes down to. QFS is pretty good. And also the right clicks or right clicks. I knew I was going to make that mistake at some point. The strong attacks of the QFS are actually pretty good. So it's not bad. It's really good, but I don't think it belongs in S tier, not alongside these two weapons. Scimitar. This is a D tier weapon. Why is it not a C tier weapon? Basically because the Falchion exists. It would be a C tier weapon because it's basically like it's almost defining of a C tier weapon. I almost want to put it in C tier just because it's like it kind of belongs in C tier, but the sole reason that it doesn't belong in C tier is because the Falchion exists. The Falchion is better than the Scimitar in every way, with like the exception of I think a very slight discrepancy in weight, and maybe like a very slight discrepancy in stat requirement. But like at such low stat requirements, those things are basically they are not factors. They don't matter. This weapon is bad because the Falchion exists. If the Falchion didn't exist, then the Scimitar would probably be A tier. But because the Falchion exists, the Scimitar gets relegated to like below the tier that it probably should be in, which is C tier. Shuttle. Wow. This one shouldn't be that tough. Man, I'm gonna put it in D tier. The reason that the shuttle sucks, despite the fact that you think it shouldn't, is because it's like the range is pretty bad, and also like first of all it looks stupid, which you know this is supposed to be more so objective, but like subjectively the shuttle looks dumb when you're flailing it around. The strong attacks look okay. Okay, this is getting subjective fast. It doesn't matter what it looks like. That's superficial. That's completely nonsensical biased. Let's think about what is actually wrong with this weapon. It just doesn't do very much damage. Is pretty much the biggest problem. Its base damage not that high. Its range not that good. Its strong attack goes through shields, which is like its biggest strength. But like, despite being what sounds like a pretty big strength, it doesn't like really manifest itself in the way that you'd think it would. And there are better options. When you're trying to cut through someone's shield with the shuttle, you put yourself at risk because of how close you have to get. And you'll see through other weapons why that's basically non-existent. Like, it doesn't. There are not only better options, but like the options are so good that it basically makes this a bad option. And we'll get to that eventually. Normal Greatsword of Artorias. This is a D tier weapon. Wow, that hurts a little bit because I think it looks really cool, and also it has its place, but its place is not above D tier. You can make an argument for C tier, maybe, but it's split damage, really high stat requirements, really weird scaling. It's basically the higher soul level you go, the better the Greatswords of Artorias kind of are, but at pretty much every point, this is the worst of them, and they all, I think, have either the exact same stat requirement or very similar stat requirements, which is what pushes this one down from C tier into D tier. And we'll get to that when that'll make a little bit more sense when we cover the other Artorias Greatswords. And in fact, I'm going to just do those in order real quick. Cursed Greatsword of Artorias is C tier. It's not good, but it's not as bad as the other Greatsword of Artorias. I believe it's pure physical damage, which matters. But it suffers from the same, like all of the other problems of the Artorias Greatsword, which is just that it's like really weird stat investment wise. You basically end up having to pull points out of something else if you're going for like soul level 120 to 135, or you need to just like either be fighting at a higher level bracket or be fighting at a lower level bracket with some serious cuts in other parts of your build. It's just not good. It's not bad compared to this one, but it's not good. This is the best of the Artorias Greatswords. This is the like Abyss one. I kind of want to put it in A tier just because it is like pretty good at what it does, but it's clearly better than the other two Artorias Greatswords, but it's still not very good. Really good range. I believe it has a less weird stat investment than the other two Artorias Greatswords, which is probably part of the reason that it's like significantly better. But there's still not a huge amount of reason to use it. It's not, again, it's like not bad. It's really cool. It's like an awesome weapon, but it's just not like that good. It doesn't belong with these weapons. It definitely belongs above these weapons, but it doesn't belong up here. And in fact, I'm going to put this right there. I think Dark Sword's better. Okay. Bastard Sword. Bastard Sword's a C tier weapon. Bastard Sword should be in D tier, but I'm being generous to it because I feel like being nice. Bastard Sword is strictly worse than the Claymore, basically. It has some things going for it. Claymore it doesn't require a lot of stat investment, but it definitely benefits a lot from stat investment. The Bastard Sword benefits less from stat investment. A lot of people would actually run the Bastard Sword in some kind of elemental form because it has like a slightly higher base damage than the Claymore. And for that purpose, it's basically the best of the great swords, but it's like, man, it's not that good. Top of C tier. That's like the nicest thing I can do for it, really, because like it's not. If someone's like doing really well with the Bastard Sword, it's not because the Bastard Sword's like exceptionally good. It's because they're pretty good with like greatsword class weapons. They would probably be doing better if they were using a Claymore. That's what I think. So that's where it goes. C or D tier? That's a tough question. Black Knight Greatsword goes in C tier. I think it's not bad. I think it's not good. It's really slow. It's got kind of low range. Again, 18 dex is a really weird number. Doesn't give you any benefits other than being able to use the Black Knight weapons. Yeah, that definitely goes below the Silver Knight sword. Oh, man, that sucks. I have a little bit of a nostalgic connection to the Black Knight sword. It was like how I basically demolished my first playthrough, which is like kind of lame. It basically ruins the game for some people, but also like it helped because I was a sorcerer and I had no idea what I was doing. So props to the Black Knight sword for basically like saving my run, but also like is dog shit, and well, at least in a PvP sense, it's really not that good. Basically, the biggest problem with all of the Black Knight weapons is that really weird like dex investment. 18 dex doesn't give you anything other than being able to use the Black Knight weapons. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Claymore's an A tier weapon. Claymore is an A tier weapon that also belongs above boop 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 and boop. All right, Claymore is really good. Claymore is really really good, but I think the QFS is like very marginally objectively better. Claymore it benefits a lot from like pretty high damage stat investment. Has a really good moveset. I mean, it's got the greatsword moveset. There's really not that much to say about it. If you don't know about the Claymore, then you don't know about it. You should pick one up and try it. It's pretty good. But the thing about man, it really sucks. The thing about the Claymore that kind of holds it back is that, like, anybody who makes a build with, like, poise taken into account usually will make it such that the Claymore is not made obsolete per se, but like it's made with the Claymore in mind. The poise breakpoint is such that the Claymore does not stagger you with a two-handed R1. Which, I mean, it doesn't really hurt the weapon that much, but it's definitely, it kind of sucks. That I want to say that kind of comes back from the days when the Claymore could actually stun lock you to death, which it can't do anymore, but people stick with that break point, which is just all around bad for the Claymore. So that's kind of unfortunate, but still a really good weapon. I don't want to talk about the Crystal Greatsword. Yeah, no. Oh man, that hurts. Flamberge, you know what? Make it hurt a little less. Go fuck yourself. All right, cool. Flamberge is really good. Okay. It's not quite as good as the Claymore. For whatever reason, I don't really know what that reason is, but it's definitely not as good as the Claymore. The R2s are kind of cool. It has a bleed effect, which doesn't matter because it's too slow, but it's cool that it has a bleed effect. You could potentially do something with that, but you really can't. It has higher dex scaling and lower strength scaling than the Claymore, which I think might be part of the reason that it's worse than the Claymore, because you don't get as much benefit from 27 strength two-handed as you do from the Claymore, but you get like basically the same or like slightly better. Okay, well, I think it's definitely better than the Claymore dex scaling, but like overall just like less damage and not that good. Unfortunate. Great Lord Greatsword is a C tier weapon. It has better range than the other Greatswords, but it's just like, man, the scaling's bad. It looks really fucking cool. Oh wait, I forgot I'm doing this like that. I'll switch those two. I don't know how those got like that, but regardless, this is basically where it belongs. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's not too much to say about that weapon. It's good, but it's like not that good. Manserper Greatsword, I really want to put this in the D tier, but I'll put it in the C tier, so as to not be a dick. It's better than this weapon, and better than that weapon. Alright, so that's where it belongs. Más o menos. Better strength scaling than the Claymore and the Flamberge, but it has like kind of shitty range, and also is like slow, and just all around kind of sucks. Yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. It's also really heavy, which is like kind of annoying. Oh, Moonlight Greatsword is an S tier weapon. Oh my god. Moonlight Greatsword is such an S tier weapon. Pure magic damage on a two-handed Greatsword. Or, okay, well, like, yeah. You would two-hand it typically, but like, oh my god, so good. Int scaling's kind of wonky, but like also not really. It's super good. The two-handed R2 is like kind of useful, actually. It's pretty much the only one of the weapon special attacks that's like actually useful, and it does pure magic damage, so it's really fucking good. I don't know. If you haven't tried it, try it. If you have tried it, then you know probably that it belongs in S tier. It is an S tier weapon. Obsidian Greatsword, man. That's a D tier weapon. It's better than this one. I don't really want to spend this much time thinking about like such shit weapons, but like, is it better than the shottle, dude? Oh my god, what a weird question. No, it's not better than the shottle, and it's not better than the scimitar. It is better than the Painted Guardian sword. Why the fuck is that above the other ones? Whatever. Get out of here. The short sword is also better just because moveset, and in fact, this belongs right here. You know what? I'm moving this down a tier. Go fuck yourself. That's like a bad weapon. It's bad. It's really bad. It's not as bad as this. It's not as bad as that. It's actually probably better than all those. But like, this is going to be like the creme de la creme of the E tier weapons, pretty much. What weapon was I even doing? Oh yeah, Obsidian Greatsword. It's a dragon weapon. Doesn't scale with anything. The special R2 attack is kind of bad. It's just not that good. It's got worse range than the Claymore. It's kind of stupid. Basically, it's just kind of dumb. Like, that's all there is to it. It doesn't have any advantage over the other greatswords. Silly weapon. Not bad. Looks cool, especially when buffed, but is silly. Oh, wow. Wow. This weapon belongs... Man, dude. I'm actually gonna... The thing about the Stone Greatsword is that the Tranquil Walk of Peace is broken, kind of, but also Tranquil Walk of Peace, the spell, is better than Tranquil Walk of Peace, the two-handed strong attack, and also this weapon is both split damage and bad scaling and heavy and just short range and just not good. So if you were considering the Tranquil Walk of Peace effect, then it's not that bad. And in fact, if you were considering the Tranquil Walk of Peace effect, it's not that bad, but it also, it's still not that good, man. It's really just not that good. You're better off using the Tranquil Walk of Peace spell in basically any situation, I think, more or less. I don't know. It's not good. Suffice to say that this is basically where it belongs. Uchigatana, that is an A tier weapon, and in fact, it belongs right here. Why isn't the Uchigatana S tier? Basically because I said so. The Uchigatana is not S tier because the Chaos Blade is... Oh, wow. Chaos Blade's so good. Slightly better range than the Uchigatana. It hurts you a little bit every time you hit somebody with it, but it definitely hurts them a hell of a lot more. Builds up a lot of bleed, does a very good amount of damage on critical attacks, despite not being a critical weapon. It's really strong. It's a really strong weapon. I don't think the Chaos Blade needs any, pampering, but it's pretty good. Aido's B tier, basically because I put Uchi in A tier. The Aido is slightly shorter, I think, than the Uchi. And there's not really a lot of reason to use it above the Uchigatana. It's really good. All the katana class weapons are pretty good. But it's not that good. And in fact, I'm going to put it below this, actually. I'm going to put it below the Flamberge, too. Basically, the saving grace of this is that it's a katana. Second worst of the katanas, though. The worst of the katanas is the washing pole. Okay, washing pole has insane range, but it's not as insane as it should be. The washing pole strikes, your character does this weird thing where when he slashes, it looks like he's not using the full length of the sword. And if you try to use this sword against somebody, you'll notice that you're not hitting people from as far away as you feel like you should be. In addition to the fact that it's heavy and has worse scaling and is not as good as it should be. I think it's slower too. It kind of feels bad to put it here because I always really wanted the washing pole to be good. I tried to use it several times, but it's just not. It's not as good as it ought to be, I suppose. If when you swung the weapon, it hit from as far away as the sword looks like it should, when you're just holding it in your hands, then it would be like a lot better than it is. But the range is like not an appropriate trade-off. It like hits slightly further away than the Chaos Blade. Maybe not that slightly, but it's not as much as it should be. Yeah, that's pretty much what it comes down to. S-Stock. S-Stock's very good. Not an S-tier weapon because I said so, but it's definitely like an A-tier weapon. The thing that holds the S-Stock back is that despite being like fast and good and doing, I guess decent damage on like backstabs and stuff or whatever, it's just not, like, the range isn't really that big of a deal. It kind of is if somebody doesn't have a shield, I guess, but like people usually have shields, and the S-Stock, oh man, I guess when you could ghost hit it was a lot better. Man, that's a tough question. I think if you could still ghost hit, then it would be S tier, but you can't ghost hit. You can't be dead angled, which I guess is good, but like not that good. It doesn't matter that much. And in addition, the S-Stock like stabs, pokey stabs. So like if I were to compare, so this is like a really, really sort of niche build, but basically comparing for turtles, for like shield bitches, basically, between the S-Stock and the Balder Side Sword. The reason the Balder Side Sword is better basically comes down to two things. One, it's like more spammable than the S-Stock, because your strikes are just like more likely to hit in general because of the path that the weapon takes when you swing it. And because of the path that the weapon takes when you swing it, it's also vastly more likely to cancel backstabs, which is not a thing that happens with the S-Stock. It can happen with the S-Stock, but you have to like make it happen. With the Balder Side Sword, if you just unlock and start flailing, like there's like an 80% chance that you'll just cancel a backstab. So, damage cancel backstabs are a real thing, and it actually matters, and the S-Stock doesn't do it so well. You have to make it happen, whereas the Balder Side Sword makes it happen for you, which is, it's good. It's very good. Mailbreaker's an E tier weapon. That's kind of generous. I almost want to put it in F tier. It's also definitely better than like almost all of these. Rapier class weapon with no range. Basically a dagger, but like it doesn't have enough respect for itself to call itself a dagger, so it continues to try to pretend to be a rapier, which it is not. I mean, it literally is. It has the moveset, it has the critical bonus. It actually has a better critical bonus if I remember correctly, but it sucks. It's really bad. No damage. Terrible. Rapier is an S tier weapon. Rapier in plus 15, in Chaos. It's really good. Basically, most people would not use a rapier by itself. Some people would. Some people would use a rapier by itself. Most people would not. But basically, anybody who has any of these weapons will also have a rapier. And even some people who have the S-Stock will also have a rapier. Rapier is just really good. It's like a weapon that you always want to have on hand to be able to switch to. The stat requirement is low enough that you can chaos it and just have it on hand at pretty much any point in time. Or if you already have the stats invested in dexterity to have a high damage dex build, like with the Chaos Blade or Uchigatana, then you can just have a plus 15 rapier, and it's like also really good. Or you can, stick with a Chaos Rapier, because both are really, really strong. You basically always want one of these. Super S tier. It's going up here just because like you would never pair any of these weapons together, but like this one gets paired with all of them. You would always have a rapier, more or less. Ricard's Rapier, that's a C tier weapon. Could be B tier, but it's not, because I put it in C tier. Also, I'm definitely giving up on like the whole left to right thing, because oh my god, I don't want to like sort through. Whoa, where does the fucking Ricard's Rapier belong? I mean, this is actually frankly where it belongs. It keeps itself out of D tier based on the fact that it's a rapier. That's pretty much all there is to it. It has nothing particularly special about it. The right, I almost said it again. The strong attack is like a flurry of stabs, which is kind of cool, but also useless, and it doesn't get the same critical bonus that other rapiers do. Slightly longer range, but that doesn't matter because it's like so slight. I mean, it does, in a literal sense, you like would hit somebody with the Ricard's Rapier where you would miss them with the normal rapier, but like that's it's such a minor and niche situation that it doesn't matter. Velka's Rapier is also C tier. I want to put Velka's Rapier in D tier just because I'm like mad at it for not being as good as I want it to be. But I'll leave it in C tier, and I'm going to do a little bit more of this just because I want to show that I think the Velka's Rapier is better than Ricard's. It's a split damage weapon, which kind of sucks. I believe it has intelligent scaling, which is kind of cool. But basically... Oh, and also pretty good range, which is nice. And the S-Stock moveset as opposed to... Wait a minute. No, that's the same. That's exactly the same. But yeah, it has cool strong attacks that aren't useful, and it has slightly longer range, enough so that it actually matters. It's almost on par with the S-Stock in terms of range, but the split damage is really what holds it back, and also can't be buffed with like resin or anything. No weapon buffs, no resin. Sad boys. I wish it was better. It looks so cool. Anyway, Challenge Trident's an E tier weapon. It's not a good weapon. It has a buff, but like most people won't let you use it, and it takes forever. And if they can see you or hear you, then they'll probably find you, assuming you're like invading. And if you're dueling, then there's like no guarantee that anybody's going to let you get it off anyway. And even if they do let you get it off, then it doesn't matter because it lasts like 30 seconds. It's just bad. Basically completely pointless. Also kind of sad because, again, a weapon that like looks kind of cool, but like it's just not very good. Demon Spear is an S tier weapon because, okay, it's breaking down a couple things. First of all, it's split damage, which is a bad thing, but it's split lightning and physical, and it's like pretty small amount physical and like a decent amount lightning. The reason it matters that it's lightning is because it can do decent chip damage through most of the popular shields, and also it just has like stupid range. Like anybody who has one of these, one of these, one of these, or one of these will also benefit from having one of these. Boop. No, it doesn't belong there. It's definitely below all these weapons, but like it's really good. Once you've done a sufficient chunk of damage to somebody, you just pull out a demon spear, and then bada bing bada boom, you're a little bitch. Shazam. You can chip somebody through a shield. You can stand a million miles away from them, and there's nothing they can fucking do about it. It looks kind of cool, I guess. It's just really good. It's a really good weapon. You basically, like, usually, if not always, want to have one on hand. And also, the stat requirement's kind of low, and the scaling sucks, so it doesn't really matter what your stats are. It can be used on an int build, although you wouldn't really want it on an int build, because... Boop, 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 boop. Moonlight Butterfly Horn, also an S tier weapon. Definitely better than this one. The pairing of Rapier, Moonlight Greatsword, and Moonlight Butterfly Horn is super good. Like, holy fuck, it's so good. Yeah. It's, like, super strong. Like, S tier. That's the reason they're all in the S tier. This right here, boom, boom, and boom, is a whole build. Like, you have one equipped at any point in time, or you have main hand... main hand primary Moonlight Greatsword and main hand secondary Rapier, and you switch between these when you need to. Very, very good. Super good weapon. Only for intelligence builds, but it's so good for intelligence builds that that's like where it belongs anyway. Dragon Slayer Spear, B tier weapon. It's not bad. It's not really good. Whoop. Kind of weird stat investment. Lightning split damage, which is good. I mean, it's not good, but if you're going to have a split damage weapon, you want it to be either Chaos, which is, like, not epic, or some kind of weird native lightning weapon, which is basically exactly what I've described here. Wow. Beautiful. It's not that good. It's actually pretty bad, but it is a spear. It's kind of cool. I'm struggling to find things to say about this weapon. It's not that good. You can make an argument for C tier, but I'm going to put it in B tier just because it's a pretty long spear that is also pretty cool. Plow doesn't belong in F tier. That's mean. It doesn't belong in F tier at all, but it does belong, yeah, right there. It's like really... basically the thing that hurts the plow is that, like, if you're going to use a spear, use like anything other than the plow. You know what? There. Hopefully that makes the plow a little bit more happy, because I don't want to piss it off or anything, but like it's just... it's so bad, dude. Also, like, it has one more, spork tine than the Channeler's Trident, so that also like puts it into the D tier. It's not bad. But it's like really bad. Terrible. Okay. Wing... No. This is the broad spear. Wow. That makes my decision not any different, really. Oh, man. I guess it's above that one, huh? In a weird way. It can be buffed, which puts it above the Dragon Slayer spear a little bit. The strong attacks are debatably useful in, like, some kind of situation, I guess. But it's just, like... It's just kind of poopy. I don't know. You know what? You've been demoted. You've been demoted to right here. Woof. What a drop. It's because you suck, though. God damn. Anyway. Pike is actually worse than it, somehow. Basically, it's just too heavy. It's pretty much the big downfall of the Pike. You can make a good Pike build, and the Pike itself is not that bad, but, yeah, there are better options. Like the Silver Knight Spear. Wow. Great lead-in. B tier. Right there. Quite good, actually. Does more damage than it should, and is deceptively long, even for a spear. Pretty good. You can make an argument for this being A tier. I don't know if you could make an argument for it being S tier. Man, now that I said that, I kind of want to put it into A tier, because I think you could almost make an argument for it being S tier, but, like, I'm going to leave it in B tier and give it, like, a tentative, like, wow, look, it's at the top of the B tier. But yeah, I don't know. It's not great. Awkward. The spear is the worst of the spears. How did that happen? Yeah. Right there. There's not much to say about it. And in fact, bing bam bibbity bop. There's like there's such a small difference between the spears. Basically what it comes down to is like they all kind of have the same moveset, with the exception of the broadhead spear or the broad spear or whatever, with the like slashing attacks that aren't very good. And they all, so like basically what it comes down to is like how heavy is it, how much damage does it do, and how much range does it have. And the ones that excel beyond C tier are ones that either have exceptional range, exceptional damage. Well, this is like basically exceptionally weird damage. Pure magic isn't very nice. Or some combination where it's like deceptive range and like really good damage. Like you can actually main the Silver Knight Spear. It wouldn't be that bad as a soul weapon, but the pike is not that good as a soul weapon. The soul meaning like SOLE, not like soul. There's no soul SOUL upgrade path or whatever. But regardless, this is bad. This bad. This bad. The reason they're bad, because there are other better spears. That's it. Black Knight Halberd. Oh man, that's a C tier weapon. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of argument about that one. It's got the same thing as all the other Black Knight weapons. Yeah, it's got the same thing as all the other Black Knight weapons, where like the 18 dex. I know I've mentioned it a couple times now, but the 18 dex requirement is like kind of wonky, and is just kind of annoying overall. Also, it's very heavy. They're all very heavy. It's just not very good. Sorry. That is an A tier weapon, and it belongs right here. I don't think I can reasonably put it above the Claymore just because of like usage, but it's like super good. You can make it a pretty good elemental weapon. It's also, man, it's much better as an elemental weapon than it is as like a raw physical weapon, but it's got really good range. There are some like really weird mechanics that happen with the halberds, which kind of matter, but also don't really. I'm not going to get into that, but like there are some cool things that happen with all the halberd class weapons, like counterattacks, and yeah, I'm not going to get into it, but basically they're kind of cool, and this one's particularly really good, especially as an elemental weapon. Giant halberds, bad, but not so bad that it belongs below the shuttle. This weapon's also kind of bad. Great Scythe is like, first of all, super overhyped, and second of all, like if you use it, you're kind of dumb. Not because it's like bad, but because you could just be using something better. Well, that's really mean. It's just like, look at it. It's kind of stupid. It can't think for itself. Here, you know what? Fuck. Boop, 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 boop. This is just to make the Scythe feel better. Or the Great Scythe, rather. The Scythe can eat shit. That That makes sense. I'll go with that. That's fine. Basically, the big problem with the Great Scythe is that you have to put more work into it than like it puts out for you as like actual tangible benefit. The running attack's pretty cool, but it's like just not that good overall. Yeah. Halberd's B tier, like right here. Yeah. I don't really have too much to say about the halberd. I didn't use it too much. I used it a little bit. Well, I mean, a little bit for me, relative to like other people, is like a lot, but you know, relative to the other weapons that I've used, I haven't used the halberd too much. There's definitely a reason to use the halberd. There's an argument to be made in favor of the halberd, but I don't want to talk about it too much. It's a quality weapon similar to the claymore, but it's not my cup of tea. It's pretty good though. Life on Scythe. That's a C tier weapon. Below the Great Scythe, below all of these, below this, above that. That's where it belongs. Más o menos. Unique bleed effect, kind of, I think. It inflicts a lot of bleed, but it also inflicts a little bit of bleed on the user, which isn't usually a problem. Slightly lower range than the Great Scythe, in addition to, again, like kind of less damage than I think it should do, but that's whatever. It's not that good. Lucerne is either at the top of the D tier or the bottom of the C tier. No. That's a little higher than that. And below the washing pole, though. Yeah, it's not bad. It's also not good, which is basically what the C tier means. That's the idea. Basically, like, for quote-unquote normal weapons, A through E tier. Whoa. Yeah, basically for like normal weapons, A through E tier. A being the top of the normal weapons, E being the bottom of the normal weapons, and then F tier like so garbage that you should never use them, and S tier are so good that like if you're not using them, then you're basically just doing it for fun. Scythe. Like that? That makes sense. Titanite Catchpole is an F tier weapon. It's just bad. Split damage, shit scaling. I guess you could argue that it belongs in like E tier, but not really. Oh man, it is better than the Channeler's Trident though, isn't it? There you go. that's your saving grace, Titanite Catchpole. It's bad. It's really bad. This is an A tier weapon. It's bottom A tier. In fact, it should be. Yeah. There you go. That makes a lot more sense. It's got a cool moveset. It's the only one of the maces that, in my opinion, really works at all. The other maces are kind of really dog shit. Just overall, the clubs and maces are not very good. You'll see a lot of those in C tier pretty soon. But the Blacksmith Hammer has like better range and basically very little stat investment requirement, which makes it pretty good. The Blacksmith Hammers and the clubs and all this shit. Man, I only really want to rank one of these because they're all so fucking similar. They're C tier weapons. They're C tier. I'm not gonna like. Wow, the Vamos Hammer is a D tier weapon though. There you go. Yeah. The Vamos. Wait a minute. What the fuck happened here? We're done with that. No more of that. No more. The mace. There you go. Morningstar has a bleed effect. Doesn't matter. Pickaxe, all thrusting attacks. Doesn't really matter. Well, okay, kind of can't matter. There you go. Reinforced Club also has a bleed effect, but kind of shitty scaling, and also doesn't matter. Warpick, also all thrusting attacks, also really doesn't matter that much. Dragon Tooth. God, this is like such an easy weapon to rank, but I don't want to put it where it belongs, which is at the bottom of D tier. Sorry. It's cool. It's neat. It's bad. That's it. This is also cool, neat, and bad. This is also cool, neat, and bad, but it's cool, neat, and worse than the other two. This one is cool, neat, and good. Holy shit, is this good. I'm gonna, spoiler alert, I'm gonna put this and the large club right next to each other wherever they end up. Great club and large club are both actually not that bad. The rolling attack's really good, and the R1s are not so great, but they do a lot of damage, and backstabs with them do a lot of damage. I still don't think they're very good, though. I honestly want to put them at the top of B tier as opposed to A tier, so that's what I'm going to do. I think any weapon that's like a large weapon that is used for just backstabs doesn't really belong in the A tier. So like this and this and this are all pretty big and basically used for backstabs, and also, like, that's pretty much it. Smo's hammer. Wow. Smo's great hammer. Basically belongs with all the other weirdo fucking great clubs or whatever. Great hammers. This one has the added bonus of having a similar lifesteal, well, quote unquote, a life regain effect from like the server. It's actually double that of the server. The server heals 5 on hit, and the Smo's hammer heals like 10. But like, good luck fucking hitting anybody with it. And it's also just got an insane stat requirement, and also it's just stupid. It's a bad weapon. This one's not that bad, but definitely C tier. Yep, definitely C tier, and also like not that good. Biased me would put this in the A tier. Unbiased me will put this at the top of the B tier. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, I really don't want to, though, but I will. Unbiased me says that this is not an A tier weapon no matter how much I like it. Unbiased me says that it's still really good, despite the fact that it's not good enough to meet my expectations. Sorry, son. I love you, but you're just not good enough. This is such a bad weapon. Holy shit. Crescent Axe is just bad. Split damage. I think it has faith scaling, which is also kind of shit. I'm kind of just gonna... I'm gonna plop this down randomly. No, I'm not. Boom. Actually, you know what? Go fuck yourself. It's got good range. Better range than the... Butcher Knife, which shares a moveset with it, but well, not a full moveset, but parts of a moveset with it. The R1s are the same, but it has split damage, and it's stupid, and it's bad. Gargoyle Tail Axe. I think Gargoyle Tail Axe, so this also shares a moveset with the, I mean, obviously, I guess they're in the same category, but regardless, this one shares a moveset as well with the Butcher Knife and Crescent Axe, but the difference between this and the Crescent Axe is that it's actually good, and the difference between this and the Butcher's Knife is that I can't tell. Like this one, the Butcher's Knife is obviously better, but I don't know how much better than the Gargoyle Tail Axe, because the Gargoyle Tail Axe is not that bad. It belongs out of C tier, but it also doesn't really belong anywhere above where I put it, and in fact, ooh, nice. That's a whole one, like, weapon slot up. Good job. Proud of you. This one can go in the... I'll put it in the C tier because I want to be nice. But realistically, this weapon is held back by the fact that the Butcher's Knife exists, which has better range and pretty good damage comparatively. In addition to the fact that the Gargoyle Tail Axe also exists. The strong attacks are not really useful at all. And it's just not, like, a good weapon per se. Hand axe. Okay. So that's a weird placement. But not really. Because the hand axe is actually a lot better than you think it is. If you think you know how good the hand axe is, then you don't know how good the hand axe is. And if you think the hand axe is really good, then you're, like, kind of wrong. Because it's not that good, but it's definitely, like a lot better than most people give it credit for. Not a bad weapon. Not a bad weapon by any means. This weapon, on the other hand, is quite a bad weapon. It's better than Smo's hammer. It's better than the Grant. I don't know why I'm still doing this. I said I wouldn't do it. Coolness factor puts it above this one, but it's also dog shit, so whatever. Not going to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It's bad. Wow. If it were up to me and like my personal opinion, I would put this weapon in the A tier. But I'm trying to be a little bit objective about this because I want it to be better than the community tier list. Oh, fuck. God damn it, I want to put it in the A tier. Look at how it looks so snug there. But now, this is top of B tier, bottom of A tier material. There should be a tier in between that's just Black Knight Great Axe tier, which is where it goes. Has a completely unique moveset. Nothing else shares a moveset with the Black Knight Great Axe. And the unique moveset that it has is actually pretty good. But it just kind of isn't... Man, it's not as good as it should be. Like, it's good, but it's not as good as it, like, is, if that makes sense. Which it doesn't make sense, but, like, that's why it belongs at the top of the B tier. It does make sense as a weapon. It's good, though. Whoa, holy shit. Yeah. Right there. Right there. Right there. All these weapons occupy the same tier because they're all pretty bad. Yeah. Not much to say about that. This weapon also gets a nice, comfy spot right here. And the Great Axe can have... Oh, man. The Great Axe is actually so much better than those weapons that I'm going to put it somewhere in C tier. Somewhere in C tier. Above you? Above you. Above you. Above you. 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 That's tough. No. You know what? There. Okay. The Great Axe is not that bad, despite kind of lacking range and being overall sort of wonky. But it's, like, significantly better than all of its contemporaries. Like, by, you know, an entire tier plus some, like, a decent, you know, chunk of the whole weapon shiz and the such like. This doesn't necessarily mean that it beats these weapons, but it means that it has, like, some advantage in its weapon class that allows it to, you know, push itself up here, which is basically, in the case of the Great Axe, it's scaling. It has decent scaling as well as decent base damage, in addition to the fact that it could be buffed if you really wanted to, like put some resin on it or maybe put a buff on it. But it belongs up here basically because of its damage. It does a lot of damage and also is, like, faster than like makes sense for it to be. I don't know. It's not bad. Bandit Knife. Bandit Knife sucks because the rapier exists. All daggers suck. Mostly because the rapiers exist. Even if the rapiers didn't exist, the daggers would kind of suck, but at least they'd have a niche. The rapiers exist, so they don't. The Bandit Knife is the best of the daggers, with the exception of the Dark Silver Tracer, which gets a comfy spot in, like, the middle of C tier, because it does one thing, and it does that thing well. Normal dagger goes below that. This dagger goes below that. This dagger goes, like, I'm pretty sure above that. Ghost, this is like really quick and fast because all the daggers are basically the same. Priscilla's dagger is also weird. Priscilla's dagger has a niche. It's just that niche isn't very good. Man. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's definitely worse than the base dagger. It's also, like, almost certainly worse than the parrying dagger. But it's definitely better than the Ghost Blade. I want Priscilla's dagger to be better than it is, but it's not. And that's just the truth. Cestus. Cestus is an E tier weapon. Not good. Don't use it. Claws are also E tier, but better than the Cestus. Dark Hand is not a weapon in my opinion. I'm not even going to put this on the rank. Well, you can use it as a weapon though. Wow. I'm not gonna rank the Dark Hand on this tier list. I think it makes more sense for the Dark Hand to be a shield than it does for the Dark Hand to be a weapon. That's it. Dragon Bone Fists, I think is what they're called. Better than the Cestus. That's it. It's not better than Claws. It could be, well, no, it's not better than Claws. It's just not good. Yeah, so all of the whips, this is actually one of the biggest problems I have with the community tier list. All of the whips are F tier weapons. I don't really, like, think I even need to argue that because I think the game argues it for itself with the fact that they can't backstab. They can't perform criticals of any kind. They can't backstab, they can't riposte. The basic whip has nothing. The notched whip has a bleed effect. And the, like, Sanctuary Guardian's tail, I don't know what it's called, but this whip has a poison effect, or like a toxic effect or something, but they're all really bad. And that's actually going to conclude it, because I'm not going to rank the bows alongside other weapons. It doesn't make sense to rank them alongside other weapons. In addition, Catalyst, Pyro Hand, Skull Lantern, and Talismans do not belong alongside the other weapons. They're basically completely separate from any other type of weapon. So that basically concludes the tier list. This tier list is not... It is objectively better than the community tier list in some ways because it is like more sensible. First of all, bows don't belong on the same tier list as other weapons. Second of all, the whips are F tier. So like straight up, those two facts make it better than the community tier list. I'm not going to argue that. Those are objectively true. There's a little bit of bias that went into this based on what people have used. These maces could potentially be better than they're placed on this tier list, but the fact of the matter is the fact that nobody's like really used them that successfully, despite several people trying, probably means that they're just not that good overall. They're not bad per se, but they take up the bottom of C tier for a reason, and that's pretty much all there is to it. Other important things about this tier list. I think I explained why the S stock is not S tier. I don't know if I did a good job of that, but I don't think the S stock is S tier. I think it's top A tier, and that's that. Uchigatana is definitely top A tier, like the top creme de la creme of A tier, and not S tier, in my opinion. That's purely an opinion. You could definitely... This is like one of the most questionable weapons. This is like one of the second most questionable weapons, and that's kind of how I've made this tier list, which is like, okay, how good of an argument can you present that this weapon belongs where it belongs? Rapier is obviously S tier. Baldur's Side Sword is obviously S tier. Longsword's obviously S tier. Moonlight Greatsword is obviously S tier. Uchigatana is obviously S tier. And these weapons are all paired with these other weapons, which is like what the S tier should be. There shouldn't be like a question of whether or not a weapon should be moved out of S tier. These are all clearly S tier. They don't belong anywhere else. The rest of the weapons are all weapons that you could make an argument for being either a tier up or a tier below where they actually end up, with a few exceptions, which are the F tier. There's absolutely no argument that can be made for these weapons to be anywhere other than where they are, which is like deep in the F tier. They're bad. That's it. Yeah. Outro.